Now I'd like to be able to take some questions, if I may. And I'm told that Dimitri of the Financial Times has the first question. I'm embarrassed. I think it's CBS, but I can't remember who is CBS. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Xi Jinping is somebody who's going to take that and he's going to run with it. Joining me now, Michael Pillsbury, Senior Fellow for China Strategy at the Great Heritage Foundation. Michael, setting aside the humorous fact that the president can't function as an adult, he's meeting with a world leader who's going to be making assessments during that meeting, and that's what we saw on camera. Michael, I just shudder to think what impression Xi Jinping has of this nation as he heads back to China.
Well, Jesse, it was a 4-hour meeting, and apparently they served chicken and something called avocado crisps. So it was quite a fun experience.
Jeez. Okay, Michael, what is the purpose of this meeting for each of them? Why even do such a thing? What are they doing?
Well, the Chinese side has been much more frank. Their purpose is to increase American investment in China. It's already $2 or $3 trillion over the last many, many years. And foreign investment in China, Jesse, has been the secret to their success. It's why they've gone from only about 1/10 of our economic size to about 75% of our economy. It's the biggest economic challenge we've ever faced. So that's the Chinese side. That's why the dinner with the CEOs was so important. And obviously the CEOs all stood up and gave Xi Jinping a standing ovation last night. So that's a success for the Chinese side, getting American money and technology to continue and even increase. On Biden's side, it's more difficult to understand. He seems to have been concerned that the Chinese somehow endorse him or praise him and treat him with respect as a world leader. And Xi Jinping did not attack him or mock him. But I think the Biden team is hoping for kind of an endorsement for Biden as president because he's succeeded in getting along with Xi Jinping. Biden didn't make any demands. They seem to have known in advance that the military contacts were going to be restored. So the Biden side looks like they just wanted to be praised and treated with respect by China so that they can sort of lock in their re-election campaign for next year.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Michael, because I found that fascinating. Joe Biden has, for a few years now, been very fond about talking about how close he is with Xi Jinping. I spent all this time with him. We were in the Himalayas together. He does this about every 35 seconds. But how in the world does that help him with the American people? Joe Biden being close with Xi Jinping has got to be about item number 1,000 on the list of every single voter's wish list. So what do we care?
Well, there's a kind of a wink and a nod going on here that Biden's got the war in Ukraine. He's got the war with Hamas and the potential of a war over Taiwan. So that would make him a 3-war president, which would hurt him with voters. So this performance yesterday, in a way, is saying, I'm not going to get in a war with China. I can get along with Xi Jinping. Don't you see we're having this almost romantic stroll in the garden with the flowers? And the American side obviously had to approve Xi Jinping coming here. They had to give a visa to him and his team, let his plane come in, and then let him have this dinner with the businessmen and access to American capital. So the Biden message seems to be, I'm a competent president, at least when it comes to China, and I'm not going to get into my 3rd war.
Oh, gosh. Okay, now let's talk about this military communication agreement, which, as you said, they pretty much had set before they got here. That's a little bit concerning on the surface. Should it be? What does that mean? They're going to communicate.
Well, what they say is they want to head off an accidental war. So, as you know, Chinese jet fighters and even Chinese bombers are circling around Taiwan every day, crowding up against the international identification line. If one of those Chinese jet fighter pilots is kind of a hothead and goes extra far, crashes into a Taiwan jet fighter or even one of our reconnaissance planes or one of our bombers. I mean, they came within 10 feet of one of our B-52 bombers. just a couple of weeks ago. If that happens, the idea is we both militaries get on the phone and say that was an accident. We don't intend to start a war with you. Please forgive us. That's the concept. Whether that would actually happen in the past has been very questionable, because the Chinese in some past crises have refused to pick up the hotline telephone. So even though you have the hotline, it doesn't mean that they'll necessarily use it. So it's a head-off accidental war. That's supposed to be the reason for it.
Okay, Michael, let's talk about the Taiwan situation. I've been told by people who know a whole lot more about it than I do that China, if they're waiting until elections Taiwan is going to hold in January. Is that the case? And if so, why?
Because politics in Taiwan is complicated. There's something like 30 or 40% of the island that's willing to have political talks and political agreements with China. The election is January 13th. If the DPP guy who's the current vice president, he goes by the name William Lai, if he wins, the Chinese have talked themselves into that this will be a cause of war. At least it'd be very disturbing for them. So they have to ramp up their efforts to use force. If he does not win, and right now it's sort of neck and neck, if he does not win, the party that will win already has agreed over an 8-year period with the previous president to have political agreements. I don't know if you've been to Taiwan, but right now you can fly from Taiwan to Beijing about 10 times a day. There's a nonstop flight. There's about 2 million Taiwanese business people in the mainland. They're major trading partners with each other. So the Chinese belief is if they can continue that trend to show that the Biden administration really is not going to help Taiwan very much, they're optimistic they won't have to use force. But all this depends on politics. As I say, January 13th, we'll all be up late that night trying to see who gets elected, because China has made these penetrations of the identification zone. They have made that into a really serious threat for the past year. My hunch is the Biden summit with Xi Jinping will fail in the sense that China will not stop these menacing air raids against Taiwan. We'll know that within a few days, because Taiwan posts every day the number of penetrations of their area by Chinese communist jet fighters and bombers. We'll know that within a couple days if they've cut back or not. My hunch is they have not cut back.
Okay, let's talk about Taiwan, just no matter my feelings or yours on it militarily. Can they make China, now, setting us aside, can they make China feel it if China decides they don't like the way this is going and they're just going to take it? I know Taiwan is not going to defeat China. I'm not an idiot, but can they make them feel pain?
Yes, they can. But again, this group in Taiwan that is pro-communist China. And that's what, according to Chinese communist writings, they lean heavily on those people. That's why, I'm beginning with President Trump and others, there's been an effort to persuade the Taiwanese to defend themselves and to be careful about pro-China elements. Every now and then a spy is arrested in Taiwan who's a senior general or admiral. So this is what Beijing banks on. The outcome of the war depends almost entirely on how quickly the U.S. forces get there. If we have aircraft carriers, if we have 82nd Airborne, if we have Special Forces troops already on the ground, which there are a few there now, it'll make up, Jesse, for the fact that we have not had exercises or training. We don't store weapons on Taiwan. In many ways, Taiwan's a sitting duck. So this is what attracts China to a military solution. How fast would President Biden intervene? If he takes a week to think it over and use the hotline and say, gee, we see some forces invading Taiwan. Is that really you? Did you really intend that? As the week goes by, the Chinese forces get more and more domination of the air over Taiwan. And then it's sort of like the end of the war, except for resistance. That's what I'm most afraid of. So Taiwan could hurt them in an invasion, but mainly it depends how fast America reacts. A question of hours as opposed to a week or two to think it over.